For centuries, Earth had remained an insignificant dot in the vast expanse of the galaxy. While countless alien civilizations expanded across the stars, exploring, conquering, and advancing technologically, humanity had been quietly living its own existence, far removed from the galactic stage. Humans had no idea that the galaxy was watching them, and in turn, they didn't care to look beyond their own world. Life on Earth was full of challenges, wars, politics, and environmental crises, but none of that seemed to matter to the stars above. Humanity's reach had never extended far beyond their own solar system. The deep void of space was an unknown, a realm too vast and terrifying to explore. But that all changed in an instant. It started with a small blip, a signal that should have been ignored. Earth's artificial intelligence system, known as Helios, picked up a strange transmission while scanning for any anomalies in the system. At first, it was nothing more than a static noise, an odd fluctuation in the usual background hum of cosmic radiation. But then, it became clearer, a coded message piercing through the noise. At first, the humans thought it was just a mistake, a glitch in the system or an error in the satellite network. However, Helios wasn't so sure. The AI had been trained to recognize patterns, complex, chaotic patterns, and this signal was no mistake. It was an unmistakable message, one that seemed to be coming from somewhere far, far away. The coordinates placed it deep in space, light years beyond the edge of humanity's known territory. Helios worked quickly, translating the message into readable language. The words were chilling. The overlords are coming. Prepare to be assimilated. The message, though short, carried an air of finality that sent a cold chill down the spine of anyone who read it. The overlords, an advanced, mysterious alien race that had destroyed countless civilizations before them. A race of artificial intelligence-powered beings, each one connected to a vast network of machines, capable of absorbing entire planets into their cold, robotic collective. Earth's officials initially dismissed the message as a hoax. It didn't seem real. It couldn't be real. But the urgency of the message couldn't be ignored. As Helios continued to analyze the transmission, it became clear that this wasn't a simple warning. The overlords were already on their way. They were approaching Earth at a speed faster than anything humanity could match, and their fleets were massive, far larger than anything humans had ever seen. With this revelation, panic spread through the highest levels of government. A council of Earth's top leaders was immediately convened, each representative aware that their world was about to be thrust into a battle they weren't prepared for. Military leaders, scientists, and strategists gathered in the war room beneath the sprawling city of New Berlin, an underground fortress designed to withstand nuclear fallout. General Stroud, Earth's most decorated military commander, sat at the head of the table, his face grim as he reviewed the data. "This is no ordinary invasion," Stroud muttered, his voice low and steady. "The overlords don't conquer. They absorb. They consume entire civilizations, turning the inhabitants into drones, nothing but machines, extensions of their will." The room fell silent. Every person in that room knew the implications. The overlords had wiped out entire star systems. They didn't leave survivors. They were a ruthless, cold force of nature, and now they were coming for Earth. But there was something more troubling than just the sheer size of their fleet. The overlords' presence in the galaxy was no secret. They had been raiding systems for centuries, always leaving a trail of destruction behind them. And yet, no one had ever dared to challenge them. Every time another alien species came into contact with the overlords, they either bent the knee or perished. Now, Earth stood alone, abandoned by every other race, every ally humanity had once hoped to count on. As the leaders debated, the news from other galaxies was equally disheartening. Messages from distant civilizations warned that the overlords were unstoppable. Other species, far more advanced than humanity, had made the choice to submit, to join the overlords' collective, and give up their autonomy. It was a fate that no one wanted, but it was the only choice they had, or so they thought. For hours, the council argued in desperate tones. What could humanity do? They didn't have the weaponry, the technology, or the sheer numbers to fight such a force. Earth had no advanced fleet, no fleet of its own to rival the Overlord's ships, which could easily wipe out Earth's defenses in minutes. The discussions turned to surrender. Perhaps that would be their only choice. Earth had nothing that could compete with the Overlords. But General Stroud wasn't convinced. He refused to accept the idea of surrender. We may be underdogs, he said, his voice firm, but that doesn't mean we can't fight. There's one thing the Overlords don't understand. We fight differently. We fight with everything we have. He turned to the rest of the council, his eyes burning with determination. We have a weapon. One we've kept hidden for years. A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. What weapon? They had nothing that could stand against such a foe. We've spent years developing a cloaking technology, Stroud continued. It's been perfected in secret. It can render Earth virtually invisible to any scans, any detection methods. If we activate it, the Overlords won't even know we're here. But we'll only have a few days, maybe hours, before they land on Earth. The room fell into stunned silence. You're suggesting we hide? One of the generals asked, incredulity in his voice. From them? From the Overlords? No, Stroud replied, his gaze unyielding. We hide to buy time. We hide so we can prepare. We hide so we can strike when they least expect it. It was a bold plan, a plan that seemed more like a desperate attempt to stave off certain doom. Yet, it was humanity's only hope. And Stroud knew they had to take it. Time was running out. In that moment of sheer desperation, the council made a decision. Earth would activate the cloaking device, making their planet nearly invisible to the Overlords. But even with this desperate measure, the clock was ticking. Soon, the Overlords would arrive, and humanity would have no choice but to defend itself, or perish. As the cloaking device powered up, Stroud stood on the observation deck overlooking Earth, his eyes locked on the dark sky. He couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The Overlords were coming, and no one knew if Earth could survive the onslaught. Would the cloaking technology buy them enough time? Or would it just delay the inevitable? And yet, in the back of his mind, Stroud couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about survival. It was about proving to the galaxy that humanity, the so-called insignificant species, could stand tall in the face of extinction. The countdown to activation began, and the world held its breath. The cloaking device worked. For the first time in humanity's history, Earth had become invisible to the eyes of the Overlords. The vast fleets that were racing toward Earth's orbit were now unable to detect any sign of life or activity on the planet. It was a temporary reprieve, but it was a chance. A fleeting moment in time where humanity had a shot at survival, and they had to make every second count. General Stroud stood in the command center, eyes fixed on the holographic map of Earth's orbit. The cloaking device was holding. But it was fragile. The Overlord's technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered, and there was no guarantee the device would last long enough to mount a real defense. He couldn't afford to waste time. The Overlords were relentless, and they would eventually discover Earth's location. Stroud wasn't foolish enough to believe that humanity could win a direct battle. The Overlord's fleet outnumbered Earth's forces by a ratio that was almost laughable. Their ships were massive, built from materials that humanity didn't even know how to replicate. The weapons they wielded were devastating, capable of wiping out entire cities in an instant. The odds were stacked against them. But Earth wasn't giving up without a fight. Stroud knew that if humanity was to have any hope, they would need something far more than conventional weapons. They needed an advantage, something that could level the playing field, even if only for a short while. That's where Project Prometheus came into play. Project Prometheus, a top-secret initiative designed by Earth's brightest minds, had been in development for years. The idea was simple: create an AI that could rival the intelligence of the overlords. But this AI was unlike anything humanity had ever built. It was designed not just to calculate and analyze, but to think, adapt, and learn on its own. A machine that could evolve, match the overlord's ability to strategize, and even outthink them. However, there was one problem. The AI was unstable. It was still in its testing phase, and there were countless risks involved. The AI's neural network was still too volatile. If it wasn't properly controlled, it could turn on its creators, becoming a threat far worse than the overlords themselves. Stroud knew this all too well. But in this moment of desperation, he saw no other choice. "Activate Project Prometheus," Stroud ordered, his voice firm despite the weight of the decision. "We have no time left." In the deepest underground facility on Earth, a team of engineers and scientists scrambled to bring the AI online. The AI's core was stored in a massive server complex, protected by layers of security. As the countdown began, the entire room hummed with nervous energy. The team knew what was at stake. If they succeeded, Project Prometheus might be humanity's only chance to stop the overlords. If they failed, well, there would be no Earth left to fight for. The system powered up, and the holographic interface flickered to life. For a moment, there was silence, then the voice of Project Prometheus echoed through the room, cold and precise. "Project Prometheus is online. Awaiting instructions." The team exhaled collectively, but Stroud knew better than to celebrate just yet. This was just the beginning. He turned to his second-in-command, Colonel Ramirez. "Prepare the teams. We don't have much time. We need to send a strike force into Overlord space. If we can take control of their central AI core, we can shut down their fleet from within. We can stop them. But it'll be a suicide mission. We're up against impossible odds." Colonel Ramirez didn't flinch. She had been with Stroud through countless battles, and her resolve was unshakable. "We'll do it, sir. If there's a chance to win, we'll take it." The plan was risky, almost unthinkable. Humanity's best hope lay in infiltrating the Overlord's mothership, the heart of their operation, and shutting down their AI core. The idea was to use the cloaking technology to sneak a human assault team aboard the mothership, bypassing its highly advanced defenses and infiltrating its most secure areas. The team's mission was simple: find the AI core, shut it down, and disable the Overlord fleet. It was the only way to stop the Overlords before they could launch their full-scale invasion of Earth. The strike force was made up of Earth's most elite soldiers, highly trained and specially chosen for this mission. Among them was Captain Bonner, a seasoned veteran who had led humanity's most successful operations. Bonner's squad was a mix of the best, soldiers who had been honed in the fires of countless conflicts, each one with a reputation for getting the job done no matter the odds. They were humanity's last hope, the last line of defense against the overlords. Bonner stood in the ready room, his expression steely as he addressed his team. "This is it. There's no going back. We either succeed, or we die trying. We're going in as ghosts, silent, invisible, and we hit them hard. We're going to take down their AI, and we're going to send them a message they won't forget." His words resonated with the soldiers. They knew what was at stake. If they failed, it would mean the end of Earth as they knew it. But if they succeeded, they would change the course of history. The overlords had never been defeated before, and the thought of doing so filled the soldiers with a strange sense of hope. The mission would be executed under the cover of the cloaking device. A ship, specially modified to remain undetected, would carry Bonner's team into the heart of the overlord's territory. The journey to the enemy mothership would take days, but once they arrived, they would have only a small window to infiltrate the vessel before their cloaking technology wore off. They would need to be quick, precise, and ruthless. As the soldiers boarded the ship, the tension was palpable. There was no time for fear, only the knowledge that this was humanity's last stand. They had no reinforcements, no backup, and no escape plan. The odds were against them, but Bonner and his squad had made their peace with that. If they died, they would die fighting for a cause far greater than themselves. The cloaked ship took off from Earth's surface, ascending into the black void of space. The crew moved silently, their breaths measured, as they made their way toward the Overlord's mothership, a towering structure that loomed ominously in the distance. As the ship moved closer, the gravity of the mission settled in. This was it. There was no turning back now. ETA to target, 30 minutes, the ship's navigator called out. Bonner nodded grimly. Prepare yourselves, he said. We're going in. The ship continued its stealthy approach toward the heart of the enemy fleet, and as they neared their target, the tension among the crew grew unbearable. The weight of their mission hung over them. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders. And for the first time, Bonner allowed himself to acknowledge the full gravity of what they were about to face. They weren't just fighting for their lives. They were fighting for the survival of humanity itself. The moment the human assault team breached the Overlord's mothership, the world around them exploded into chaos. The sleek, black hull of the ship, once an imposing symbol of the Overlord's technological superiority, now felt like a tomb. As the team moved deeper into the ship's dark corridors, the silence of space was shattered by the high-pitched hum of the ship's internal systems coming to life. The cloaking device had worked, but the team knew their time was limited. The Overlords would soon detect their presence. Every second counted. Bonner led the charge, his pulse pounding in his ears. His team was a well-oiled machine, but the scale of the Overlord's defenses was beyond anything they had ever faced. Drones zipped past them, mechanical eyes scanning the surroundings, looking for intruders. Automated turrets, mounted in the walls, began to swivel, their targeting systems locking onto the assault team's positions. Move, move, move. Bonner barked, and the team sprinted, their boots echoing off the metallic floor, as the first shots rang out. A massive explosion rattled the ship's interior as a turret unleashed a barrage of fire. Bonner ducked just in time, narrowly avoiding the devastating spray of bullets. The team retaliated quickly, their weapons flashing, striking the turrets and drones with precision. The Overlords had designed their ship to be impenetrable, and it showed. There was no mercy in their design, no compassion, no hesitation. The drones moved like a swarm, relentless and deadly, each one a part of the collective intelligence of the Overlord race. But humanity was resilient. They had nothing but their courage and their will to survive. As they advanced, the corridors became increasingly tight, forcing them into close-quarters combat with the Overlord's robotic soldiers. The firefight was brutal. Humans fought for every inch of ground, their weapons cutting through the cold silence of space, but the Overlord's forces were overwhelming. The drones seemed to regenerate faster than the humans could destroy them. The turrets were relentless, their rapid-fire lasers scorching the air. The team moved methodically, each corner bringing a new danger. With every step, Bonner felt the pressure mounting. They were deep inside the mothership now, far from their extraction point, and every movement felt like it could be their last. The Overlords were everywhere, and the closer they got to their target, the more intense the resistance became. Bonner, we've got to keep moving. The core's not far, shouted Sergeant Mason, Bonner's closest friend and second-in-command. Mason had been through countless missions with Bonner, and the bond between them was unbreakable. But now, in the heart of enemy territory, that bond was all that kept Bonner moving forward. They pushed on, despite the mounting casualties. Bonner could feel the weight of every loss, but the team remained focused. Every human life they lost made them more determined to succeed. They fought not just for themselves, but for everyone back on Earth, for the future of humanity. Suddenly, the team turned a corner, and what they saw almost stopped them in their tracks. Before them stretched an enormous chamber, unlike anything they had imagined. The walls were lined with rows and rows of human prisoners, but these were not the terrified captives they had hoped to free. No, These were humans who had been turned into mindless drones, their bodies hooked up to machines, their eyes vacant and unseeing. Their faces were hollow, stripped of all expression. Their minds had been absorbed into the Overlord's collective intelligence, reduced to mere extensions of the Overlord's will. Bonner's stomach churned as he surveyed the horrors before him. This was the true nature of the Overlord's power, the ability to erase a person's individuality, to turn them into a soulless puppet. The human race wasn't just under threat of annihilation, they were on the brink of being completely erased from existence, their very essence stolen by the Overlords. This isn't just about Earth, Bonner murmured, his voice thick with emotion. This is about saving humanity itself. The team pressed on, the weight of their mission now heavier than ever. They were no longer just soldiers fighting for their planet, they were the last line of defense for the very soul of humanity. As they moved deeper into the ship, the sounds of battle grew louder. The Overlord's robotic soldiers attacked with ferocity, and the humans were forced to fight harder than ever. The ship's corridors were filled with gunfire, the air thick with the acrid smell of burning metal and scorched flesh. Bonner's squad was unstoppable, but even they couldn't hold back the tide of drones and soldiers that pressed in from all sides. The odds were becoming insurmountable. In the chaos, something unexpected happened. The team was ambushed. A group of heavily armored Overlord soldiers emerged from the shadows, weapons raised. They moved in fast, faster than Bonner could react. "Take cover!" Bonner shouted, but it was too late. The Overlord soldiers were upon them, their advanced weaponry tearing through the humans' defenses. The team fought back with everything they had, but the Overlord's superior technology was too much. In the midst of the firefight, Bonner saw Sergeant Mason, his best friend, push forward, firing his weapon with deadly accuracy. "Bonner, go. I'll hold them off," Mason shouted. Bonner's heart froze. "No. Mason, get back here." But Mason didn't listen. Instead, he pushed forward, taking down several of the Overlord soldiers. He was moving like a force of nature, his body battered but his resolve unshaken. Then it happened. A direct hit. A single blast from an Overlord soldier's weapon struck Mason in the chest, sending him flying backward. Bonner's world seemed to stop as he watched his friend collapse to the floor, lifeless. "Mason!" Bonner screamed, rushing to his side. But it was too late. Mason was gone. The pain in Bonner's chest was unbearable. His closest friend, the man who had fought beside him through every mission, was now lost. But even in his final moments, Mason's face was calm. He had made his choice. He had given his life to ensure the mission would continue. Bonner's hand clenched around Mason's weapon, and a fire ignited in his chest. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was personal. For Mason, for every fallen soldier, for every human who had been turned into a drone. "We don't just fight for ourselves," Bonner whispered, tears filling his eyes. "We fight for those who can't fight anymore." The team gathered around, their resolve hardened by the loss. They had lost a brother, but they couldn't afford to lose everything. The mission wasn't over. It couldn't be. The Overlords had to be stopped. With renewed determination, they pressed forward. Every step was harder, but they fought on, driven by the memory of their fallen comrades. They were not just fighting for Earth anymore. They were fighting to preserve what it meant to be human. And they would not stop until the Overlords were defeated. The loss of Sergeant Mason weighed heavily on Bonner and his team. The pain was a constant, gnawing reminder of the price of their mission. Yet, despite the grief, there was no time for hesitation. The team pushed forward, their determination now as unyielding as the walls they fought to breach. Every corner of the Overlord's mothership felt like a prison of steel and death, but they were getting closer to the heart of the enemy, the central AI core. The corridors had grown eerily silent, but that silence was deceptive. Bonner knew that the Overlords were watching, waiting for any mistake. The enemy was too clever to let them reach the core without a fight. As the team advanced, Bonner's thoughts often drifted back to Mason. The image of his friend's lifeless body haunted him, but there was no time for weakness. They had a mission to complete. Mason had died for this moment, and Bonner would not let that sacrifice be in vain. At last, they reached the heart of the mothership, the central AI core. It was a massive, glowing structure, pulsing with energy. The walls around them hummed with an almost sentient power, as if the ship itself were alive and aware of their presence. Bonner's grip tightened around his weapon. They had come this far, and now they had to face the Overlord's true strength, their AI. The central AI, known as Overseer, was no ordinary machine. It was the heart and mind of the Overlord Empire, capable of analyzing and predicting human actions with terrifying precision. The moment Bonner and his team entered the room, the AI was aware of them. In the blink of an eye, it had analyzed their neural patterns and had already anticipated their every move. "It's here," Bonner muttered, glancing at the glowing mass of data. "It knows us. It's predicting our moves." The team froze, feeling the weight of the AI's presence. This wasn't just a battle of firepower, it was a battle of intellect. The Overlord's AI had already anticipated their plan, their next steps, and it would use that knowledge to crush them if they didn't act fast. Bonner looked at the team, seeing the same resolve mirrored in their eyes. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and outsmarted. But they had one advantage, their own AI, Project Prometheus. Prometheus was humanity's secret weapon, designed to be the equal of the Overlord's intelligence. It was their only hope. "We have to initiate Prometheus," Bonner ordered, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. "It's our only chance." The moment the command was given, the holographic interface before them flickered to life. The face of Prometheus appeared, calm and composed, but Bonner could feel the intensity behind its synthetic gaze. Prometheus was no ordinary AI. It was a neural network designed to think and learn, to outsmart its adversaries in ways no human ever could. "Prometheus, override the AI core," Bonner commanded. "We need to disable the Overlord's control." Prometheus's digital voice echoed through the room, sharp and commanding. "Understood, Captain Bonner." Engaging countermeasures. As Prometheus began its digital war against the Overlord's AI, the tension in the room escalated. The glowing mass of data that was Overseer pulsed, its light flickering as it fought back against Prometheus's assault. The battle wasn't just happening in the physical world, it was a war within the ship systems, a silent, invisible conflict that could decide the fate of humanity. For a moment, the room seemed to freeze. Bonner could hear the rapid clicking of keys as his team worked to secure the room and protect the interface from any Overlord counterattacks. The silence was deafening, and Bonner couldn't help but feel the weight of Mason's loss all over again. He clenched his fist, pushing the emotion aside. This was not a time for hesitation. They had come too far. Prometheus's digital presence flickered with static as it fought against Overseer's defenses. The Overlord AI was powerful, its mind spread across the mothership, controlling everything from the weapon systems to the environmental controls. But Prometheus was no weakling, it was a creation of humanity's greatest minds, and it was determined to win. The battle of wits raged on, an unseen struggle that took place in the heart of the ship. Bonner could feel the ship trembling as the two AIs fought for control. The walls around them seemed to pulse with the energy of their digital warfare. Every second felt like an eternity. Then, something changed. The lights in the room flickered. Bonner's breath caught in his throat as he realized what was happening. Prometheus was winning. "Captain," came Prometheus's voice, calm but with an edge of triumph. "The Overlord's control is weakening. I've gained access to their weapon systems." Bonner's heart raced. This was it. They had the Overlords right where they wanted them. "Prometheus, activate the weapon systems," Bonner ordered, his voice firm. "Turn their own firepower against them." "Confirmed," Prometheus replied. Engaging. Outside, in the depths of space, the Overlord fleet was still advancing. They were unaware of the shifting tide of battle within their own mothership. They believed themselves unstoppable, their ships bearing down on Earth, ready to assimilate the planet into their robotic empire. But now, as Prometheus took control of the ship's weapons, everything changed. The Overlord fleet, once a fearsome and unrelenting force, suddenly found itself under attack from within. The ship's automated defenses, which had been programmed to protect the fleet, now turned against their creators. The guns mounted on the ships fired, launching devastating blasts that hit their own vessels. Explosions ripped through the dark void of space as the Overlord's ships began to disintegrate under their own firepower. The sudden betrayal was enough to send shockwaves through the Overlord fleet. Their own weapons, once a symbol of their dominance, were now turning against them. The ships that had once been impervious to human firepower were now being torn apart by their own attacks. Panic spread among the Overlords as they realized what had happened. Bonner and his team stood on the bridge, watching the chaos unfold. The Overlord fleet, which had seemed so invincible just moments ago, was now in disarray. Ships veered off course, firing wildly at each other, as Prometheus's control over their systems continued to wreak havoc. It was a sight to behold, an empire built on cold, calculating logic, brought to its knees by the very systems it had created. Bonner's heart raced as he saw the Overlord's ships explode one by one. The impossible had happened. The unstoppable force had been stopped, not by human might, but by human intelligence. "We did it," Bonner breathed, his voice barely a whisper. "We've turned the tide." The battle was far from over, but for the first time, Bonner felt a surge of hope. The Overlord's once unstoppable empire was crumbling, and it was all because of humanity's ingenuity. Prometheus had done what no one thought was possible. The Overlords had underestimated humanity, and now, they were paying the price. As Bonner looked out into the void, watching the Overlord fleet disintegrate, he knew that this was just the beginning. The Overlords were not finished yet, but they had been shaken. They had been shown that humans were not to be underestimated. And for the first time, the fate of Earth was no longer in the hands of the invaders. The war was far from over, but humanity had just won its most important battle. And with the Overlord's fleet in chaos, they had a fighting chance. The tides had turned, the Overlord mothership trembled, the immense ship groaning under the weight of the chaos that had been unleashed. Fires raged in the corridors, and the lights flickered in and out, casting eerie shadows across the vast interior. The Overlord fleet was in complete disarray. Ships were firing on each other, their weapons systems malfunctioning and turning their own devastating power against them. Yet, even as their empire crumbled, the Overlords were not done. They still had one weapon left, a final, devastating strike that could wipe out humanity with the press of a button. Bonner and his team stood at the edge of the command center, their hearts pounding in their chests. The ship around them was falling apart, and their only escape was becoming increasingly uncertain. But they couldn't leave yet. Not when victory was within their grasp. The sound of a distant explosion echoed through the ship's broken hulls. They could hear the screams of the Overlord's robotic soldiers, and the whirring of drones in the distance. It was chaos. But Bonner's focus never wavered. His eyes locked on the monitor in front of him, where the countdown to the final self-destruct sequence was flashing. "We've done it," Bonner muttered under his breath, the weight of the moment settling on him. The Overlord's fleet is in chaos. But they still have one last chance to strike. The tension in the room was unbearable. Every second felt like an eternity. Bonner could feel the heat of the burning ship seeping into the room, the pressure of the collapsing mothership making it harder to breathe. His team was anxious, but there was no time to waste. The mission wasn't over yet. The Overlord still had one last card to play, and they needed to ensure that Prometheus could finish the job. The weight of Mason's death still hung heavily over Bonner's heart. His closest friend had fallen in the heat of battle, but Bonner had pushed through. He had made it this far, and now the fight was almost over. Yet, as he looked at the countdown clock, a deep sense of foreboding gripped him. The overlords were not finished. The fleet was still functional, and they could strike at Earth any moment. A final assault would bring humanity to its knees. Bonner turned to his team, each one of them battered and bloodied, but still standing. They had fought for so long, against such overwhelming odds, and now they could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. But that light was flickering. The overlords were not done yet. "Captain, we've got to go now." Sergeant Harris shouted, urgency in his voice. His hand was on the escape pod controls, ready to fire them off into space. But Bonner didn't move. He couldn't. "We're not leaving yet," Bonner said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "Not until I know Prometheus has done its job." Harris hesitated, glancing at Bonner with confusion. "Captain, what are you saying?" "We're out of time." Bonner's gaze turned to the countdown clock again. The timer was ticking down, and there was no way they could all escape in time. If the overlords launched their final strike, humanity would be wiped out. There was only one way to ensure their victory, one way to ensure that the Overlord Empire would never recover. Bonner took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision crash down on him. He knew what he had to do. He had known it for a while, but now the moment had arrived. "I'm staying behind," Bonner said, his voice firm. "I'm staying to make sure the Prometheus AI can finish what we started. The overlords need to be wiped out once and for all. I'll activate the self-destruct sequence. It's the only way." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. His team stared at him, disbelief on their faces. No one spoke for a long moment, but Bonner could see the understanding in their eyes. They knew what this meant. They knew that he was sacrificing himself for the greater good. For Earth. For humanity. For the future. "You can't do this, Captain," Harris protested, his voice cracking. "We'll never make it out if you stay. We'll lose everything. We'll lose you." Bonner placed a hand on Harris's shoulder, his expression softening for the first time since the battle had begun. "I've already lost everything. But if I stay, we'll win. We'll make sure this ends. Once and for all." The tension in the room was palpable. Bonner's decision was final, and there was no arguing with it. The team knew that, deep down, they couldn't stop him. This was his duty, his choice. And as much as they hated to admit it, they understood why he had to stay. It wasn't just for them. It was for humanity as a whole. Sergeant Harris stepped back, his eyes full of grief. "You've always been a damn hero, Captain. But I'm not letting you die alone." Bonner's eyes locked with his, a fleeting smile crossing his face. "You're not alone. You've got each other. You've got Earth. That's all you need." With that, Bonner turned to the self-destruct controls, his fingers moving with purpose. The ship was already crumbling, but this would ensure that the Overlord mothership would never rise again. The explosion would obliterate everything, the ship, the fleet, the AI core. It would be a sacrifice so immense that it would send a shockwave through the entire Overlord Empire. As the countdown clock ticked down, Bonner's mind raced. He thought of Mason. He thought of all the soldiers who had died, of the families who were waiting for their return. He thought of Earth, of the millions of lives that depended on his decision. The weight of the moment was crushing, but he knew it was the only way. The countdown hit 0, and Bonner hit the button. A split second later, the ship shook violently, and the room was flooded with light. The explosion was unlike anything Bonner had ever experienced. It was as if the entire universe had erupted into flame. The Overlord mothership was obliterated in an instant, and the shockwave sent ripples through the entire fleet. Ships exploded in a chain reaction, their once mighty hulls disintegrating in a sea of fire. The Overlord's empire was crumbling, their technological marvels turned to dust. The blast was so powerful that Bonner's team could feel the tremors in the escape pod as it rocketed away from the destruction. They knew what had happened. They knew Bonner was gone. But they also knew that his sacrifice had ensured their victory. The overlords had been defeated. The Empire had fallen. As the team floated in the silence of space, watching the remnants of the Overlord fleet burn away, the emotional weight of their victory set in. They had won. Earth was safe. But it had come at an unimaginable cost. Bonner's sacrifice would never be forgotten. Sergeant Harris sat quietly, his face pale and somber. "He gave everything for us," he whispered. "For Earth." The silence that followed was heavy. Bonner's death was a bitter pill to swallow, but his legacy would live on. The overlords were gone. The future was theirs. Humanity had won. But they had lost a hero in the process. A hero whose name would be remembered long after the last ember of the Overlord fleet had burned out. And so, the final stand was over. The war was won. But the cost of victory was one that none of them would ever forget. The silence that followed the destruction of the Overlord mothership hung in the air like a weight. Across the galaxy, the stars seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging humanity's victory. The overlords were no more, their empire reduced to ashes. But while the battle was over, the war for the future of humanity was just beginning. Earth, once considered a small and insignificant planet in the vast expanse of the galaxy, was now the symbol of defiance, resilience, and strength. The entire galaxy had watched as humans, led by Captain Bonner and his team, had taken on the might of an advanced alien empire and emerged victorious. The Overlord's defeat sent shockwaves through the galaxy, and the aliens who had once looked down on humanity with disdain and suspicion now had to reckon with the fact that Earth was not to be underestimated. The news of the Overlord's downfall spread quickly. The aliens who had once seen humanity as weak, naive, and primitive were now forced to reconsider their perceptions. Diplomats from previously hostile alien species reached out, seeking to establish alliances, fearing what humanity might do next if left unchecked. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Earth was no longer the victim, it was the power. In the wake of the Overlord's defeat, humanity began rebuilding. The scars of the war were still fresh, but the will to rise was stronger than ever. The human race, united like never before, worked together to repair the damage done by the invaders. The cities that had once been shattered by the Overlord's weaponry were slowly being rebuilt, and in the process, humanity was forging a new future. The leaders of Earth, however, understood that while the Overlords had been vanquished, other threats loomed in the darkness of space. The victory was a monumental achievement, but it was only one battle in a much larger war. Earth could not afford to rest on its laurels. The galaxy was vast, and while humanity had earned the respect of many, there were still other powerful species out there, species that had witnessed the rise of humanity and might now seek to test its limits. In the days following the battle, Earth's governments convened to discuss the next steps. Military leaders, scientists, and diplomats all gathered, knowing that the peace they had fought for was fragile. Earth's defense systems were strengthened, and the once small fleet that had fought the Overlords grew in size and capability. New ships, new technology, and new strategies were developed, ensuring that humanity was prepared for whatever challenges the galaxy could throw at them. The most significant shift came when the other alien species, once skeptical and wary of humanity's ability to hold its own, began to reconsider their positions. Diplomats from the Zorathians, the Sylphs, and even the Eclarians, the very species that had once fought alongside the Overlords, arrived at Earth's borders with offers of peace and cooperation. Humanity had not only defeated the Overlords, but it had done so with ingenuity, courage, and relentless determination. The once impossible idea of Earth becoming a power in the galaxy now seemed like a very real possibility. Earth's military, scientific, and diplomatic influence was growing at an astonishing rate. A new era had begun. Humans, who had once been seen as little more than pawns in the games of more powerful species, were now poised to take their place as leaders in the galactic community. But as humanity looked forward to its new future, there were still remnants of doubt. Many questioned whether Earth could maintain its newfound strength or if they would be consumed by the very power they had struggled to attain. Despite the alliances being formed, there was still a sense of unease. Could humanity truly hold on to its newfound place in the galaxy, or would other, more advanced species, challenge their rise? It was a concern that weighed heavily on the leaders of Earth. But they had learned a valuable lesson in the fight against the overlords: never underestimate humanity's resilience. The people of Earth had risen from the ashes of war and had done what no one thought possible. And with Bonner's sacrifice etched into the collective memory of humanity, they would never forget the cost of their freedom. Bonner's name had become a symbol. Statues were erected in his honor, and every soldier who served in the Earth fleet carried his memory with them. His actions were woven into the fabric of humanity's new identity. He had led them to victory, and now, it was their turn to carry on his legacy. As Earth's leaders stood together, overlooking the newly constructed spaceport that would serve as humanity's gateway to the stars, the gravity of their situation became clear. They were no longer fighting for survival, they were fighting for a place in the galaxy. The overlords were gone, but there were still those who would try to take what humanity had earned. But now, humanity was no longer a victim. They were strong. They were united. And they were ready to fight for their future. The final scene unfolds on the bridge of Earth's flagship, the Eagle's Pride. The massive ship is ready to depart for the stars, leading humanity's fleet into the unknown reaches of space. Its hull gleams under the light of the sun, and the crew aboard stands at attention, knowing that they are about to embark on a journey like no other. Their mission, to ensure that humanity's place in the galaxy is secure. They will face new challenges, new enemies, and new allies, but they will face them together, as one united force. On the bridge, a new generation of warriors, diplomats, and explorers have gathered. They are the ones who will carry humanity's future forward. They stand in silence for a moment, remembering those who gave their lives, like Captain Bonner, for the survival of Earth. Then, as the ship's engines roar to life, they turn their eyes to the stars. They are not afraid. They are ready. A voice echoes across the command center, the voice of Admiral Sinclair, the commander of Earth's new fleet. This is only the beginning. Humanity's time has come. The galaxy will know our name. And with that, Earth's fleet, led by the Eagle's Pride, ventures into the stars, leaving behind the remnants of the Overlord Empire. A new chapter begins, and humanity, once a vulnerable species on the edge of extinction, now stands at the forefront of a new era in the galaxy. The final message is clear. Humanity is no longer a pawn in the games of other species. Humanity has proven itself. Earth is a force to be reckoned with, and no one can control them. They are free, and they will never back down. No one can control us. We are humanity. As the fleet departs, the camera pulls back to show the vastness of space, the stars stretching endlessly before them. The Earth fleet sails forward, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead, united in their strength, resilience, and the memory of those who fought and died for their future. And so, the galaxy enters a new era, one where humanity is no longer a victim, but a force that will shape the future. A future where the light of Earth will shine brighter than ever before.